So we have to have our own narrative of what history has been and what history is and what history can be used for. As Dr. Clark, our great scholar, said it best, history can be our clock to tell us where we come from, what time it is, and where we need to go. History can be a compass for us to let us know what we have to do and what we haven't done, so that we have to make sure that we don't build our narrative of socialization, how we get our values, and acculturation, how we fit into society, based upon the lies of European superiority and African inferiority. But we have to understand that we have suffered through a process of dehumanization, but our resilience and our strength has allowed us to rise. And we can say, as Maya Angelou said, "And still I rise." And African symbols of rebirth and resurrection, even after death and destruction, show that the Africans built into their culture a consciousness that out of death and destruction can come new life. And this is what is the lesson of HAPi, that there is resilience in the ecological systems of the earth, there's resilience in the human family on earth, and there's resilience in the mysteries of the universe, in the divine order of the universe that is not fully understood. But it all represents a chance to bring out of death and destruction new life, and to do as the Africans understood they were doing, build for eternity.
Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. It's so nice to, I can't see you guys, but it's nice to see you guys in the chat already, we're getting it ready. So listen, a lot of people out there didn't even know that we actually have a documentary. Everyone thinks we just have HAPi Talks, but HAPi Talks came from the movie HAPi, The Role of Economics in the Development of Civilization. And it's really important that everyone look at this documentary, because it's going to give you a history lesson about economics, and not just numbers, because a lot of times we think economics just means money, but it's a give and take, it's reciprocity. And HAPi lays it out for everybody. Okay. So we're having a screening November 21st. And it's important, even if you buy the DVD or if you've already seen it, you get the digital download, it's important to come to the screenings. And you're going to ask yourself, well, why? Well, the screenings, you get access to the panel discussion, and it's really about the panel discussion afterwards. A lot of times when we watch films, how many times do we have the opportunity to talk to people who were actually in the film right after? It's a 2-hour and 12-minute journey through time. And it's so important to, sometimes you have all these feelings about stuff and questions, because it's a lot of information. And it's nice to just be in the panel discussion where you actually get an answer. You can ask questions, and it's really intimate, and it's just a nice time to just chat with one another and with the cast members. So we are really stressing November 21st, and we actually have a surprise person that will be part of the after panel discussion. This person's in the film, but this person hasn't been on a panel discussion. So I'm telling you, get your tickets, go to hapifilm.com and get your tickets today. Now, some of y'all just like, you know what? No, I need to see it right now. You can see it right now. After HAPi Talks, you can just go to right there, go to vimeo.com/on-demand/HAPiFilm, and you can get a digital download. And that's for people who just have to see it right now, or you can do both. We have a lot of our fans that are actually doing both. So, please support the film. It's very important that we get this lesson on economics so that we can be self-sufficient. The other piece, if you have not, sign up for the newsletter. This is a way for us to communicate even more principles. of HAPi to you directly. We talk about economic innovators. We showcase a Black-owned business every single time. We have a health article, and we also do like the HAPi updates. But this is a way for us to get this information that's crucial for our development, for us to remember to get self-sufficient. So this is like a way that we're, trying to get this information to you guys. And we have 2 young people that are working on this newsletter. So, that's really important. We have a 13-year-old and we have a 16-year-old. So please support, go to HAPi Film, get connected, and join the newsletter. And we also want to say thank you to all of our supporters. A lot of times, not a lot of times, we have we have merchandise. You get everything. We have T-shirts, the DVDs, everything. And sometimes there's like some little difficulties, like with the post office or whatever. And let me tell you, every single person that we talk to is so gun-ho happy, and that's what's up. So, we want to just thank you guys for being there, for liking this, and all. Yep, you got to go up there, like it, and share this video. Subscribe, like, and share. It's very important. So we just want to say thank you guys for that. So without further ado, we are going to get to tonight's talk. Now, one of our guests, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, she's going to be coming a little bit later, because these 2 women are very busy. I tell you, very, very busy, very smart women. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Nkechi Taifa. Hey, Miss Taifa.
Hello, Felicia. How are you?
I'm good. And guys, I have to tell you, she is. I graduated from Howard University, and this is a fellow Bison. So it's always nice, to see fellow Bisons on the show. All right. So before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Okay. So I pronounce my name Nkechi Taifa, and I'm an attorney. I just wrote a memoir called Black Power, Black Lawyer, My Audacious Quest for Justice. I've been around for quite a while. Okay. I've been an attorney for over 35 years, and I'm activist for years prior to that. So I'm really honored and thrilled to share in this discussion with you this evening, and really looking forward to a riveting conversation.
We like riveting. We definitely like riveting. All right. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Let me just get my questions. So sorry. And if you could just kind of talk just briefly about how you're, how do you know Dr. Malveaux?
Oh, yes. Well, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, we're talking about economist extraordinaire. We are commissioners together on an organization called the National African American Reparations Commission, NARC. But I kind of knew of Dr. Malveaux long before that time, because you're talking about someone, very, very, esteemed. And, she's not just an economist, but she is a sister economist, if you know what I mean. I mean,
yes.
She tells like it is. And so she, along with Dr. Nana Pat Newton, the late great Dr. Nana Pat Newton, the 3 of us are part of this reparations organization, National African American Reparations Commission. And, we work together to go across the country, educating people to this very, very critical issue. And we look at it from various different vantage points. I know Dr. Malveaux speaks about it specifically from the economics point of view. Dr. Nana Pat Newton talked about it from the psychological and psychiatric point of view. And I kind of rounded all about historical, current, mesh it all together, I guess you could say. But there are other people who are part of the commission as well. And it's convened by Dr. Ron Daniels, who's the president of the Institute of the Black World 21st Century.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's just jump right into it. So how did you happen to become involved in the reparations movement?
All right. Well, let me tell you this. I'm 16 years old in Washington, D.C., selling Black Panther Party papers on the streets downtown every single Saturday. So one Saturday, it's hot out there, and, the police are going by in their cars, and we scowling at them and all. But, I'm kind of tired, so I sit down on the curb. And I actually open up the paper and just really start going through it, because, I just needed a rest from just standing up the whole time. And I opened up to the Panthers 10-point program, the what we want, what we believe. And the point number 3 always just stuck out in my mind. It always, just said something to me. And that point number 3 dealt with is something to the effect that we believe that the United States government has robbed us and we are demanding our overdue debt of 40 acres and 2 mules. I don't know where the 2 mules came from, but that's what was in the 10-point program. It said we will accept the payment in currency, and, the Germans did this for the Jews, and, it's past time that, Black folk got their due. That's basically what it was saying. And, this absence of payback from slavery continuously flustered me, because even at that young age, I knew that Black folk had been kidnapped and brought over to this country to work for free and enslaved them. I knew that we were stripped of our language, our culture, our heritage, but there was a whole lot of things, Felicia, that I did not know. I didn't know anything about the 1923 Rosewood Race Massacre, which obliterated over 40 square blocks I'm talking about Tulsa. There's so many. Tulsa obliterated Oklahoma, 40 square blocks of all Black businesses. Rosewood, Florida, okay, where another town was decimated. Wilmington, North Carolina, where the whole professional Black class was essentially run out of town. Elaine, Arkansas, and the list goes on. I didn't know about those things. I didn't know that Black women, okay, crude gynecological experiments were performed on Black women devoid of anesthesia, which led to modern day gynecology. I didn't know about those things. I didn't know about the money that was being made off our backs by corporations and industries and academic institutions, and the like. I could feel in my bones. The impact of enslavement, the tearing away of children from their, mothers, and all of those things. And I just vowed at that young age, 16, that I would do whatever I could to talk about that issue of reparations in whatever venue that I could. And I did that, despite the fact that most of the folk, back then, we're talking about early 70s, that, this is, or late 60s, whatever, way out far, radical idea, you're crazy and all like that. And so, today, I cannot begin to tell you how much of esteem I feel being in the company of people such as Dr. Julianne Malveaux, noted economists, noted psychologists, psychiatrists, academicians, talking about this issue. One of the reasons why I wanted to go to law school was so that the issues that I was talking about, such as reparations, will become part of the national mainstream conversation. And it has. I mean, it's taken almost 50 years, but it is there now. It's on kitchen table talk discussion.
It is.
Dentist offices with Ta-Nehisi's article, the Atlantic, these magazines. This all is in your face. Yeah. The 2020 candidates talking about it. Hey, reparations, it's an idea whose time has come.
Thank God you were reading this at 16. It's like, okay, it's so important. Taki, Taki, he talks about, his parents kept stuff, laying around and stuff. And he picked up, the destruction of Black civilization and how that changed his life. So I thank you. I'm just thank you for just staying committed. So now, so what is a reparation and what's its purpose? Let's start there.
Okay, well, reparations is a well-established principle of international law, which the United States is very well aware of and has, in fact, participated in. Basically, reparations is the debt owed for the Western enslavement of Africans and for the ongoing injuries against this is a crime of humanity, whether it's committed by government, whether it's committed by industries, corporations, private parties, academic institutions, religious institutions, private estates, etc. But in the context of Black people in the United States, I assert that reparations essentially constitutes 4 elements. Number 1, the formal acknowledgement of historic wrong and a recognition that the injury continues. So it's not just enslavement, it's for the enslavement and the legacies thereafter, post-enslavement discrimination, whether we're talking about the enslavement morphed into the peonage system and the black codes and the sharecropping and the lynchings and the apartheid Jim Crow and the redlining and the Homestead Act and all the way, the educational inequities and the health disparities and mass incarceration, all of that. There's a debt that's owed. That's one, the formal acknowledgement and the recognition of this continuing. Okay. Number two, an official, unfettered apology. And I say unfettered because at one point the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives did vote for an apology for the enslavement. But guess what? The Senate bill said, okay, we're going to apologize, but you cannot use that apology to support any claim for damages that you might have. Can you believe the audacity? So unfettered apology. Number three, the commitment to redress by the culpable parties. Again, whether it's government, federal government, or local government, state government, or whether it's corporations, industries, academic institutions, and the like. And then number four, the actual compensation in whatever form or forms are agreed upon. And I say, in whatever form or forms, I mean, back then when I was 16 and Panther paper, we talking about payback, yeah. Where's that check? Okay. But I've really evolved beyond just a check. A check, monetary damages, is absolutely a very legitimate aspect of any reparative justice settlement, but it's not the only one. And precisely because the harm, the injury was multifaceted,
exactly,
the remedy or the amends must be multifaceted as well. And again, it's not something that the culpable party says, okay, well, we're going to give you a scholarship and then that's your reparation. No, it's something that the injured parties decide what is appropriate as a settlement, whether it's scholarships, whether it's land, whether it's economic development, whether it's community development, whether it's repatriation to Africa, whether it's fixing policy in terms of health or the criminal justice system, whether it's monuments and, whatever it is, it's what we as the injured party deem is appropriate and correct.
Oh, okay, wait, whoa. Okay, so is the concept of reparations something new?
Oh, shit, hell no. Now, see, a lot of people might think that this dropped from the sky when Ta-Nehisi Coates came out with this brilliant essay in the Atlantic magazine. Yeah, it might drop from the sky because they saw something on Twitter, But let me tell you this. Reparations is a long-standing principle of not only international law, but here in the United States as well. There's never been any substantial period of time where Black folk have not called from it. Harkening all the way back to the enslavement era, there was a enslaved woman, Belinda Royal, who sued in Massachusetts for a pension from her former enslaver's estate, an estate which she herself had a whole lot to do with building. And she was in fact awarded some pittance, okay? But that was like the first recorded case. There was a woman later on during the enslavement time that petitioned for reparation. There was in the late 1800s, there was Callie House and Isaiah Dickinson. They had an organization called the National Slave Bounty and Pension Association, which had over, I don't know how many, 600,000 dues paying members. We're talking about the late 1800s, talking about a pension from the United States government for the enslavement era. There was Marcus Garvey during the 1920s who was talking about repatriation to Africa, not repatriation, swimming in the ocean naked, but with some type of recompense to seek to restore some of that African personality that had been, stripped away from us. We want to go on down to Queen Mother Moore, who was part of the Garvey movement. Queen Mother Audley Moore, most folk know nothing about her. She's one of the people I dedicated my book to because she was a reparationist icon. And she talked about that issue anywhere and everywhere, from the Garvey movement down to the Black Panther Party, the Nation of Islam, Republic of New Africa, you name it. Queen Mother Moore was there until she passed, I think around in 1999 or something along those lines.
Oh, okay, this is recent. Okay.
In the civil rights era, you even have Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King talking about in his book, Why We Can't Wait, talking about a remedy for the disadvantaged and talking about the issue of reparations. He might not have used the word reparations, but that is exactly what he was, in fact, talking about. I already spoke about the Black Panther Party. You had James Foreman, also a civil rights activist, interrupting Sunday service in Riverside Church in New York, calling upon the churches and the synagogues to pay up. And guess what? There was something formed around, and a number of them did, in fact, pay into some fund for reparations. You had the Black Economic Conference talking about it, on down to 1968, the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa, which said we claim no rights from the United States other than those rights belonging to human beings anywhere. And these include the right to damages, reparations due us for the grievous injuries sustained by ourselves and our ancestors by reason of United States lawlessness. And then the turn of the 20th century, just before the turn of the 20th century, we had the formation of the largest grassroots organization then and now in the 20th century to call for reparations, and that was the formation of NCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. I was at that founding NCOBRA convention. We looked around, this was 1987, and was seeing that the Japanese American Redress Bill was being debated and discussed in Congress. We looked around in 1988 and saw that President Reagan signed the bill, the Civil Liberties Redress Act, which gave $20,000 to each Japanese American detention camp survivor, a trust fund to be used to educate Americans about the Japanese Americans, a formal apology from the United States government, and a pardon for all those who resisted detention camp internment. And we said, okay, if they could do it for the Japanese Americans, they could do it for us. So, Tanisha, we worked very closely with John Conyers and helped him to draft what was called HR 40, to stand for, the 40 acres and a mule that was promised to us after the enslavement period. And we modeled it off of the Japanese American bill. They first had a bill calling for a commission to study the issue, and then that commission made recommendations to Congress. Well, my sister, that was 30 years ago, 31 years to be exact. And it wasn't until this past year, just this past year, that we've had more co-sponsors on HR 40 than we've ever had. Just this past year, where it seems that there's going to really be movement. Just this past year, where there is a Senate companion bill to HR 40. And just this last year that I think that there really might be some movement on the horizon.
Okay, okay, you said a lot. We're going to come back to HR.
More, y'all, I'm too. And then the organization that me and Pat Newton, the late great,
I love
and Julianne Malveaux, the National African American Reparations Commission, to again elevate the issue even further.
Wow. So now, okay, just take a pause. I see Dr. Julianne Malveaux in the back, so I'm going to bring her in because I want you to talk a little bit more about like all the other cases that have been put up in the U.S. in terms of getting reparations. You talked about the Japanese, and I got a question about that. But everybody, I'm about to bring in Dr. Julianne Malveaux. She is also a HAPi cast member. She holds down the film. She's all throughout this thing. So there you go. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, how you doing?
Hey, how are you? Nkechi, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you, my dear doctor, my sister, Dr. Malveaux?
Yeah, you know what, Dr. Malveaux, you're going to have to listen to the beginning of this because she gave you a really good intro, okay? So you're going to have to, after this is done, go to YouTube and check out what she said about you. It was really good. It was really, really good.
Well, thank you, my sister. I do appreciate it.
It's all good.
Yeah, so happy that you're here. So Nkechi, you were talking about some other past people who or groups of people who have gotten reparations. So when the Japanese sat and presented their case, they did present their case. It's not like the U.S. came to them and said, "Hey, you know what? We were wrong. So they
presented their case.
So they presented their case, and they said, check those 4 things. There you go. So has there ever been any other groups of people who have gotten reparations from the U.S.?
Okay, well, in the United States, well, the different state governments that have looked at the issue, and I'm not quite sure, I can't quite say that they have followed all of the different parameters, and even whether some could even be called reparations, because the settlements are so minor and dealt with just small numbers. But in '74, there was like a $10 million settlement, including lifelong medical treatment for the victims and the control group of the Tuskegee syphilis study. If you remember that back in the day, where Black men were actually allowed to have their syphilis go untreated, to study the effects and impact, even though there was a cure or whatever it is that was there. So that was a settlement that happened. There was, in 2013, there was a settlement of almost 200 Black victims of North Carolina forced sterilization program, and they received $10 million. In 1994, the Florida legislature paid $150,000 to each of the 11 survivors who were forced to flee the 1923 Rosewood, Florida massacre. I think I mentioned Rosewood earlier. John Singleton did a film on that back in the day, which helped to bring that to public consciousness. In 2001, Tulsa, Oklahoma, gave like a little pittance of a scholarship and a memorial to, with respect to the 1921 Tulsa massacre. They stay on the courts right now today, because there has never been any real full reparations or reparatory justice for that. In 2015, the Chicago City Council passed, and they did call it reparations, a reparations ordinance with respect to torture that was conducted by police department in Chicago, which was absolutely horrendous. So that settlement gave money to the victims and their families. They gave money for free tuition for the family, victims and the family and the grandchildren. They mandated that the public schools in Chicago tell about the history of the torture, and they set aside provisions for monument for that. So, and that was in fact called reparation. But again, that was a discrete, group. So we're still waiting as a whole, for Black folk as a whole with respect to reparations.
Yeah, you have anything to add to that, Dr. Malveaux?
No, I think she's got it covered. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Rosewood, because there were just these minor little, I shouldn't say little scholarships. Everything is significant, but nothing to basically mitigate the damage. And in Oklahoma, of course, they are still in court. There was a commission, and the legislature did not agree with the commission. The commission said there should be reparations, but the legislature didn't agree. So they did a little piddly this and a little piddly that. But the fact is that the damage that has been done to our people is so massive and comprehensive in so many ways that a lot of people can't get their hands around it. And we must, because there will not be peace until there's justice.
Exactly. No peace until it's justice. So, Nkechi, you talked about the HR-40, the federal bill to study and develop reparation proposals, right?
Yep.
But why is the federal government so important? Wasn't all the injury that was done like on a state level? So why are we talking to the feds?
Yeah, absolutely not. It wasn't all done by the states. The federal government.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You go on, Dr. Malveaux. You go on and start. Yeah.
No, it was pervasive. First of all, the laws that allowed enslavement came from the federal government. The reduction of our personhood came from the Constitution.
Oh, what happened to her?
I'm not sure.
Oh no. Okay, maybe she's gonna come back. She was getting. You know what? Federal government don't like it. There we go. I see her back there. We'll bring her back in.
Something happened.
Yep.
Am I back?
You were getting in. That's why. Go ahead.
No, enslavement could not have happened unless the federal government had not allowed it to happen. It would not have happened. All those laws, Jim Crow laws, black codes, they would have been corporations, and it's individuals. So those are the sources of the reparations fund. But it starts with the federals, because we would not have a capital. They wouldn't have any place to meet if it were not for us. We built that thing. And they need to remember that. I don't even call it the White House anymore. I call it the house that enslaved people built, because that's really what happened. Enslaved people built that. And so we need to just continue to remind that this was pervasive. And the pervasiveness of it really only begin to speak to the damage that was done to a people. Well, we were literally thingified. We're treated as things. And when I'm writing this book, which has taken me forever, but that's another story. But when I want to get into the mood, I read Reconstruction fiction, which angers me so much I really shouldn't read it. But then when I read a little bit of it, I jump up and get on my machine and say, okay, this is just ridiculous. I mean, the Black codes define everything about our lives: who we could marry, what we could own, where we could go. I mean, and this was after enslavement. Not to mention Jim Crow and all. I mean, there was a beautiful brief period where we had a chance between 1865 to 1875, about 10, 11 years, maybe 76, looking at. And then the white folks went crazy. There's an academic way to say that. The white folks went crazy. They started passing laws. We couldn't do this, couldn't do that. Black men or women, you could not. It's almost like they reinstituted enslavement. You had to have a pass to be somewhere. If you didn't have a job, that's the roots of the convict labor system. If you didn't have a job, you could just be arrested for not having a job. And then sold to someone. I mean, the lynching of Mary Turner was about that, about a white man who used to go to the prisons, buy Black men. They had fines. They had a fine, and he would then say, okay, you have to work for me for X number of months to pay off your fine. And then they would work on his plantation. But he was notably crazy. I mean, people knew that he was crazy. He had bad temper, and he beat this one brother who was sick. He beat him while he was sick. So the brother cracked, and he went back to the man's house with a shotgun and killed him, and shot his wife too. And I don't say this with, and I'm, whatever, you reap what you sow. But in any case, but because his brother killed the man, this was in Valdosta, Georgia, for 2 weeks, they lynched somebody every single day. They lynched somebody every day. Anybody who had any association with this man, we didn't even know. And Mary Turner's husband, Sylvester, he knew the man in passing. They strung him up. She was a 19-year-old Black woman who was 9 months pregnant, 8.5. And she went to the sheriff to say, look, y'all gonna do something about this. They said, we don't like her attitude. So they lynched her. They hung her by her ankles upside down. They lit her dress on fire. And basically she was burned alive. As they slit her belly and the fetus came out, and they stomped the fetus. I mean, but you can only do that if you think that someone is not a person. If you thingified them. So this is not a person. They wouldn't stomp their wife. Or maybe they did. But I mean, they would not light her on fire. But you have to think someone is less than a person to be able to do that kind of thing.
I think she's frozen.
Is she frozen? No, she's moving.
I'm frozen. No, I'm frozen.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're moving.
So let me accentuate some of what she's saying, and it's absolutely, there are so many culpable parties, and the United States government is in fact one of those as well. We really must remember the origins of the Black nation here in this country. We are the descendants of Africans kidnapped and transported to the United States with the explicit complicity of the U.S. government and every single arm of the United States lawmaking and law enforcing machinery, U.S. federal law, state law, high court decisions, lower court decisions. Our enslavement in the United States really was a matter of war, and it was war conducted against us. We came over here not as slaves, we came over here as prisoners of war. And the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, sanctioned and continued. In the Constitution, it continues expressly enslavement until the year 1808. In the Constitution, it specifically says that we are only 3/5 of a human being. In the Constitution, you know, I never understood why Harriet Tubman had to go all the way outside of the United States to Canada. I didn't quite understand why she couldn't have bought the enslaved slaves and they could have stayed in the free states of Pennsylvania and New York. The reason why was because of the United States Constitution. When they
the Fugitive Slave Act made it very difficult.
Said no African, even if he or she had reached a free state, none of us was safe. And it was a constitutional duty of every single white man, woman, or child to deliver us up to the government. That's why the U.S. government is also responsible, just as state government, just as corporations, just as industry, just as academic institutions, and religious institutions and the like.
Okay.
You know, the Fugitive Slave Act was extremely reductive to our people. You had people who ran to free states, Ohio notably, but other free states. But the Fugitive Slave Act allowed anybody to go anywhere and take somebody back. And one of the things that happened with the Fugitive Slave Act that has not been studied sufficiently was that free Black people, they weren't runaways, free Black people were often captured by slavers and sold into enslavement, because the Fugitive Slave Act reduced Black people, whether you were free or not, to a possible slave. So like the movie 12 Years a Slave, that happened more than once. I mean, it was a regular occurrence of free Black people being sold into slavery.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. This is just, you know,
gotta breathe.
I know. You know what? I'm still getting, I was thinking about what you said about the sister that, the lynching story that you just told.
Mary Turner.
Yeah, Mary Turner. And speaking of lynching, what does lynchings have to do with reparations? Or is there a correlation between lynchings and reparations?
Well, I think there's a correlation from this perspective, from the economic perspective. Lynchings were an act of terror. They were absolute act of terror. HAPi Wells said in 1892, this is a symbol of white supremacy. Lynching was the way that people were intimidated and frightened. And even though there were about 5,000 documented lynchings, there are probably more than that were not documented. But the news of a lynching the purpose was to strike fear in the heart of Black people. So when you see these lynchings and the bodies are still hanging off the tree 2 and 3 days later, that was so y'all supposed to be scared. You're supposed to be scared. And Richard Wright in Black Boy has a paragraph where he talks about, even though I live so many miles away, that could have been me. So what lynching did, first of all, lynchings were not all about Black men wanting white women. At least a third of the time, they were about economic rivalry. The first lynching that HAPi Wells documented was the lynching of her friend, Tommy Moss, who opened a grocery store. And the white man down the street who also had a grocery store got mad because how dare this Negro compete with him? And long story short, because two little boys were fighting over marbles, and the white man took his rifle and decided he's going to settle the marble fight. And the brothers were like, not today. And the next thing you know, Tommy and his two friends were lynched. Really, and then the guy whose store it was, the white guy, he got the Black man's store for 8 cents on the dollar. 8 cents on the dollar. So and now who else after that was going to open a store in Memphis? I mean, people were scared, justifiably so. So the issue, I mean, people often talk about specific reparations. We can say this was Rosewood, this was Tulsa, but the general reparations about this was the United States, and this was the tone and tenor of our lives at that time. That, how does a man come back from war and have to get off the sidewalk for a white person? And you've gone and fought for the country, you got to come back and get off the sidewalk for a white person. And basically, that kind of thing has to be beaten into you, or basically, you have to be so fearful as. That's why after World War I, brothers weren't having it. After World War II, brothers weren't having it, but brothers were lynched in uniform. In uniform. A man, I've got this book around here somewhere about this brother who dared talk back to a white man. They blinded him while he was in his uniform. Blinded the man. I mean, so see, at the end of the day, white people are afraid of us. And that's why they've done everything they could to objectify and thingify us.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Malveaux was talking about the lynchings, and, it really was terrorism, pure and simple. Yeah. One of the things I always remember from our late, great, dear Sister Nana Pat Newton was that the first time I heard about a concept she called transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, about the trauma that travels through your genes. That's what happens with those lynchings, and forced to look at those bodies still swinging from the trees that Dr. Malveaux, talk about the generation of that trauma. There was a study, Dr. Pat Newton was saying, of second and third generation Jewish children. And they were experiencing issues, some type of physical issues or psychological issues, something like that. And there was a study done that trauma from the Holocaust, not that they experienced, but that their ancestors, that their other generations experienced, was part of their DNA. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, what's in our DNA?
A lot.
A lot. 50 years or whatever. We're talking about centuries. I mean, the harms, like I said, were multifaceted. The compensation, the amends must be as well. And it should encompass all of this. It's not just a check. And no amount of money, and we always, no amount of money will ever compensate us for what we've been through. That's why it's a settlement when you come to the negotiating table. And that's what I hope the commission, HR 40 and the other commissions at different states and cities looking at now will rectify.
Yeah. So the money won't solve everything, but the money will help us move more easily through the world. When you look at the wealth gap and look at any other things, the opportunities our young people have to go to college, the amount of student debt that our young people are carrying, which will carry them to have for the rest of their lives. Yeah. So the money won't solve everything. And I don't think that money is the only thing. I mean, Nkechi, when we talk about our 10-point program, we're talking about not only restoring individuals, but also restoring community, restoring our institutions, restoring, our health. I mean, quite frankly, I think, there are a whole bunch of Black folks who are crazy. And it's this intergenerational trauma that we've all experienced in one way or another. And everybody needs the opportunity to go see a good shrink at least once or twice.
Absolutely. Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. We should all be doing that. I'm just saying.
We should understand what is going on and why we behave the way that we do, and then put it in context. But the bottom line is the reparations struggle is both individual and systemic and community, and it's community. And one of the things that was taken from us most poignantly was that sense of community. Yeah, families could be broken up at a drop of a hat. Marriages could be broken up at the drop of a hat. Siblings separated, looking for years to find each other. And I miss Donna Pat so much, because in a conversation like this, she just really would break it down in terms of the psychological part of this that we don't often talk about. So those people who think that it's just about a check are being extremely short-sighted about the damage that's been done.
Yeah. So when we're looking at reparations, should it just be limited to just the enslavement era, or should we be looking broader?
No, we start with enslavement, but even if we stopped, if we said, let's not even deal with enslavement, let's start with 1865. What happened to us in freedom? Well, it wasn't really freedom, because in order for the South to maintain their economy, they needed cheap labor. Cheap labor meant formerly enslaved people that you could re-enslave if you didn't have a job, re-enslave if you broke one of these little petty laws. And they had all these little petty laws that you wouldn't know if you broke the law or not, unless somebody needed to have some people pick some cotton or something, suddenly you broke the law. Black women forced into household work, and people's land taken from them. So, like we can do enslavement, but we don't have to. We can start with now. We can look at all the legislation that's been passed in these United States that basically was a wealth transfer that excluded Black people.
Yes. You want to add anything to that, Nkechi?
I just agree 100%. She hit it on the nail.
So like, who are the culprits? And like, I mean, is there like a list of companies that contributed to this?
I'm gonna let Malveaux answer that one, because I kind of talked a little bit about them generally, but particularly corporations and industries, folk that deal with the money. Maybe she can address some of that, and I'll speak to some of the other parts.
Well, again, the culprits begin with the federal government, the state governments, the pass those laws. And let's be clear, it's not just the South. California had enslavement, had certain laws against us and against Chinese people in the 1860s. California. And other places that you would think of as, California had a miscegenation law that said that black and white people could not marry. Again, California, liberal California. So we start with the feds, we go to the states, we go to some cities, but then we also look at the universities that were like Brown University and others that were basically financed through enslavement. Georgetown University sold all these enslaved people because the university was about to go under. And then you look at, as Nkechi said, the industries, the insurance industry in particular is a culprit. Yeah. They insured enslaved people and insured enslaved people, and banks used Black people as collateral for slaveholders. So we can look at almost any industry and see a differential treatment and try to figure out who owes what. But again, I'm not sure that we'll ever get a good number. I think that what we're looking for is repair. I think that but the insurance industry, the banking industry, they are culprits. The federal government, state governments, they are culprits. And if we want to go back and look at, there's some people who are doing the work to go back and look at, which industries actually exploited enslaved labor. So you've got a fair amount of that going on.
Yeah. Okay, so we already know that reparations isn't just about money. And can you just review again, like what are the different forms of reparations like can take? Like, what are some things that we can ask for? Or is there like, is it just like you can only choose from these things right here? Or can you, okay.
Again, the harm and injury was multifaceted. The remedy can be in whatever forms that people agree on or feel is necessary to make amends, whether it is scholarships, whether it is land, whether it is changing policies, whether it is monuments, whether it is some of the Georgetown folk just wanted their, the descendants of this just wanted their graves, their ancestors' graves to be upheld. I mean, it's whatever you want that you feel. I mean, it could be self-determination. I mean, there's so many aspects that, but again, it must come from the injured parties themselves. It's not something that should be dictated the culpable party. It has to come from the people themselves.
And so you guys, with the organization that you guys are have you guys came up with a list of demands?
We have a 10-point program. NARC has a 10-point program that talks about various aspects of repair. It does talk about, for example, sacred sites where people have been lynched. Basically, use them. You got yours. Okay, mine is
wait, where can we get that? Is that online somewhere?
Yes.
IBW21.org. IBW21.org, and then hit the button that says reparations. So the Institute of Dr. Daniels is our convener.
So I can just briefly say what those
IBW21.org.
Right.
Yep, right there.
So what the 10 points of the NARC program are: a formal apology and establishment of an African Holocaust Institute, what we call MAAFA, that's our Holocaust, the right of repatriation and creation of an African knowledge program, the right to land for social and economic development, funds for cooperative enterprises and socially responsible entrepreneurial development, resources for health, wellness, and healing of Black families and communities, education for community development and empowerment, affordable housing for healthy Black communities and wealth generation, strengthening Black America's information and communications infrastructure, preserving Black sacred sites and monuments, and repairing the damages of the criminal and justice system. Those are 10 points as part of a preliminary thrust of conversation and discussion amongst Black people for recommendations for repair.
Okay. And so when you guys came up with the 10 points and you presented, who do you present it to? And
well, let me just say something about that. This is a process that is evolving. Okay. It's not just something that NARC presented on high. NARC has been going around to communities and having education forums and tribunals and things along those lines to get input from communities as to what they want. And that's where part of this came from as well. Okay. It's an evolving process. But the commission that will be formed by HR 40 and the federal government, this responsibility is to look at different proposals for recommendations and to come up with and do hearings, etc., and to come up with a comprehensive set for consideration by the Congress.
Okay. This is a lot. You know what? Thank you guys for just being part of this. Okay, I have to say, thank you guys for fighting for us on the front lines, because this is a lot to. Just a lot to take in. Just thank you. So the government, I think you had talked about this, Dr. Malveaux, in terms of government legislation. Well, you both did, actually. How has it been used specifically to marginalize Black people?
When you talk about, let's begin with the Homestead Act of 1863. This is one of the greatest, largest land giveaways in the United States. We didn't get it. We didn't get that land. Recent immigrants, basically European immigrants, got that land. We got a little bit, but we didn't get much. By the time we were in the mix, that land was just about gone. That's just one example. We could look at, we could look at the GI Bill as an example, created scholarships for veterans, but Black people didn't get them. You usually had to get the scholarship or college assistance through the state. In the state of Mississippi, post World War II, the board that approved scholarships only gave 600 to Black people. And 600, and then they were like, you could go to barber school. Most of the brothers were like, I want to go to, college. No, you could go to barber school. So basically, we were marginalized. We paid taxes to support those programs, but we weren't eligible for them. There were just so many programs like that. I mean, even the minimum wage. The minimum wage, when it was passed under Roosevelt, excluded two groups of people: agricultural workers, Black men, and private household workers, maids, Black women. So everybody else got a minimum wage, but this group of people. Why? Because farmers in the South still want to keep Black labor captive. And so if you didn't have to pay them a living wage, then you could do the mess that they did with sharecropping, which you never got a fair deal with sharecropping. With sharecropping, the massa was counting what you produced and could cheat you. And some people couldn't keep good records. I always call it the thumb on the scale. If you go to the butcher and the butcher puts a thumb on the scale, you paid for more than you got. And with Black people, we pay for more we get in America every day. The thumb is on the scale to prevent us from having our fair share. So, the land grab. Then there's a whole series of things with like the inability to participate. So because we were marginalized, we could not participate in some of the economic growth that occurred. So we saw economic growth occur. We saw other people get rich from it, but we didn't. And then, of course, the whole issue of redlining. And basically, the Federal Housing Administration basically denied us the opportunity to get loans and then declared that our communities were unstable if they were mixed. So then not only could we not get loans, but our homes were declared higher risk. So, all of this is just designed to basically re-enslave and to reinforce inequality.
Yeah.
Felicia, if we were taught history like this from this frame of reference, okay, there would be no question that these issues we would have had reparation by now. But the way the educational system has been, we weren't taught none of this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, I'm just saying, and we weren't. This analysis, was not there. We were kept in the.
They didn't want us. They didn't want us to know this. They didn't want us to know this. This is the issue. And the other piece of it that's poignant, there's a book, is that people who experienced some of this wouldn't talk about it. The people who experienced lynching had it in their family, they wouldn't talk about it. They were ashamed. They thought that something was wrong with them as opposed to something wrong with the system. So, there's I don't have that book in front of me, but it's called something like Lynching as a Ritual. It really talks about how so many of our elders were afraid to talk about lynching. So many people who were in Tulsa didn't want to talk about it. I mean, to them, it was something that was shameful, not something that was, wrong. It was, yeah. And so when people actually choose to talk about their families in this context, it's extremely empowering and inspiration for all of us, because there are very few, but there are some who talk about what happened to their family's wealth. There's this movie that's really great. This film is called Wilmington on Fire. And it's about Wilmington, North Carolina in 1896, where basically they ran all the wealthy Black people out of town. They gathered up all the Black men and arrested them, and then the next day gave them tickets out of town. They lost everything they had. And there's a brother, I'm trying to remember, Manley is his last name. Alexander Manley was the publisher of the Black newspaper. And white folks were angry with him because there's a crazy white woman who was in the United States Senate, actually, the first woman in the Senate. And she actually wrote an article and said, if we have 1,000 of them to save our white womanhood, we should do it. And this brother responded by saying, basically, these white girls are chasing Black men. This is not the other way around. And so his piece was serialized. A lot of white newspapers picked it up. So people, and in that period, that 1896, we're out of Reconstruction, they basically, again, thingified us. They caricatured us. One of these newspapers, I saw one of the cartoons, and it's a person with a face, but the bottom of their body is like an ape. So the top is their face, and they had a tail. And this was supposed to be a Black man. So that's where some of that stuff comes from. But anyway, Wilmington, Black people worked next to white people in the same port and made the same money. Now, this was a problem for white people. How can these you-know-whos make the same money I do? And so the community was being fermented You know, a
At
lot
9
of
o'clock.
it was being fermented. It was being agitated. In the context of that agitation, the red shirts, which were the grandfathers of the Ku Klux Klan, they call themselves the red shirts. The red shirts rounded up. They decided they were going to cleanse Wilmington of Black people. So they rounded up the most prominent Black men, arrested them, gave them tickets to get out. They had everything they had was basically appropriated by their neighbors, took it. 200 people were deputized. White people were deputized. And so they would go around and say to people, well, I'm going to claim this property. And they would just take it. Just take it.
And there were many people murdered and just thrown into the river, that the river was running red. And I want to know, Dr. Malveaux, why is it that we don't know? I didn't know about this till I saw the film Wilmington on Fire. And I just saw the film a couple of years ago. I mean, I worked on the case of the Wilmington 10, dealing with in the same thing when I was in college in the 70s. And I didn't know anything about the Wilmington on Fire that happened in the late 1800s, even though I went to the valleys and no one was talking about it.
But that's a point, Nkechi. People are ashamed. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to. There's a lot of pain there. There's a lot of hurt.
But you know what? No one is told to forget about the Jewish Holocaust.
Absolutely.
The whole motto is never forget. And they transmit that on. But you're right. That's been the opposite. And I'm glad about films like Wilmington on Fire. I'm glad about shows like Lovecraft Country and Watchmen, where they reenact the Tulsa massacre so that new generations can see. Well, now there's a lot of other stuff too, but they reenact it. And I just love the history, because we don't get the history from the ordinary sources, the education system that we're supposed to get.
No, but this is a history that will never be taught, because if you're in the South, like my godchild, this is hilarious. When he was about 6, his first grade teacher told him that the South had won the Civil War.
What?
And he told her no, they didn't, because even at 6 he hung out with me and he was always learning and absorbing. And he said no, they didn't. And the woman wanted to send him home. You know, and I told his mom, I said, I'll be on the next plane out.
I know that's right. Oh my God. She don't want Dr. Malveaux rolling up in the school.
But some Southern people still believe the war was fought over states' rights, not over enslavement. The South won. You know, they I won't say they believe it. They need to believe it to reinforce their sense of white supremacy. They need to believe it, whether it's true or not. But, you know, when you look at school boards and how books get into the curriculum, I promise you, they will not be showing Wilmington on Fire in the Atlanta public schools. You know, that's a story they don't want to hear. I wrote a piece for
that's a part of history, and we need to demand it. I mean, that can be part of a reparations claim as well. True history be taught in the school systems here in this country.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, you know, that's why it's so important. Everybody in the chat and everybody listening, it's so important to support these films when filmmakers make them. You know, and that's they're not nationwide because there's just not enough support in a big way. You know, it's like pockets of people, but that's why, just like with HAPi, and you know, you were in the film American Lows. You know, with Blackmore Films, that's our little comrade. You know, you were in that film, and these are films that people need to get out and see. And Dr. Malveaux, you're also in the film. I keep seeing you. This keeps showing up on my Instagram feed. You're in a couple of films here. But like these are the films that we gotta support, so we get to start knowing this history that makes us dig and dig and dig. Because in the digging is when we find it. Oh my gosh!
Another one. Sam Jackson has one called "Enslaved." It's an excellent, comprehensive look at the Ma'afa. You know, that Holocaust of enslavement. But you know, HAPi definitely needs to be in the schools. We need to know about white supremacy. I'm just saying. But really, Dr. Malveaux, that really should be and could be a very legitimate reparations claim in terms of the textbooks and the true history that needs to be taught. Dr. Greg Clark talks about that all the time too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It should be one of our demands, because I mean, literally, I was working with a young white guy on a piece that I wrote, and he was the the editor's assistant, and he said, "Did this really happen?" I said, "Have you ever heard of Google?" He said, "I want you to Google Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921."
Oh,
Because
God.
this couldn't have happened in the United States. I'm like, yeah, it's even in Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And let me just say, everybody's talking about Tulsa now today. But I remember in 1985 when the Move House was bombed in Philadelphia. For those who might know, Move, it was like a back to nature group. And not only was that house bombed, but all of the houses on that block were burned. I mean, it was just devastating. But I remember at that time, that's when I just first heard that wasn't the first time that a Black area had been bombed by the U.S. government. That's when I first heard about Tulsa. But I had not heard about it before 1985. And it's exactly, Dr. Malveaux, because of what you said. We don't talk about those things. We were embarrassed. We were ashamed. Or we were fearful that because those people were still in power, that they will come back and do it again.
Yeah. My grandmother was actually born in Tulsa in 1921.
Oh my God.
God rest her soul. She just passed away about 2 months ago. And so I grew up knowing about Tulsa. I grew up knowing that, they still haven't paid the life insurance because Black people had life insurance. They still haven't paid those, like their policies out. Like, this is just, it's like to know it is to be enraged, but then you have to take the rage and you have to do something with it, or else it'll just bring just bring you down. I mean, into a place where you can't be, functional. So I'm so happy. I'm gonna just keep saying this. I'm so happy you guys are on this board. I can't wait to get these 10 points. We're gonna post them so that everybody can understand them.
Good.
Because it's we need to get involved. And every time I hear someone talking about reparations, and it's like you said, Nkechi, they don't understand it in a real way because they're just like, oh, we're not going to be able to get the money. I don't know why we're wasting our time trying to get this. That sounds asinine when you guys are breaking down why we're even at this point. I'm sorry.
Part of the thing. Part of the thing with the exercise of doing the research, writing, and documentation, whether money is distributed or not, what I always tell people is what we're doing is giving young Black people a sense of themselves. We are philanthropists in this country. We are not, you always hear people say they always have their hands out. No, we don't always. You wouldn't have a country if we weren't here. You wouldn't have anything if we weren't here. So we are philanthropists. United States, a gift. And now we want to get paid for the gift. That's all. And then by get paid, again, it doesn't mean write checks. There's so much more to do than write checks. If the economy were fair, we could get, if we had allowed Reconstruction to continue, we would not have needed a darn thing from white folks. But they could not let us exist as free people. They had to re-enslave us.
Yeah. It's like they had to, and once we learned these set of rules and they keep changing them around, to suit themselves. Okay, Nkechi, I'm gonna, cause I know you have to, leave us in a minute or two. So there seems to be like a groundswell of reparations activity in jurisdictions across the country. Can you just talk about that? Because I know something happened in North Carolina.
Yeah. So real briefly, yes. In Evanston, Illinois, actually, Dr. Malveaux and myself and other members of NARC participated in the historic scenario. A young alderman in Evanston, Robin Boo Simmons, thought up the ingenious plan of using tax revenue from the legal cannabis industry in Evanston to fund reparatory justice projects in that jurisdiction. They're looking first at redlining, so they're working on that, and we work very closely with that effort and actually certified what they did as a legitimate reparatory justice endeavor. Asheville, North Carolina, voted to establish a commission to look at the issue of reparations. Chicago, Illinois, our brother from NCOBA, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, Cam Howard, was very instrumental in getting California to look at the issue. The state of California has voted on a resolution to establish a commission similar to the HR 40 federal commission. DC, a council member, Kenyon McDuffie, just introduced a bill to establish a task force to study the issue. Many people don't realize that in DC, reparations were paid, but they weren't paid to Black folk. They were paid to the former slaveholders under the DC Compensated Emancipation Act. Can you believe that? So we're trying
the Compensated Emancipation Act.
Compensated. It was called compensated.
Who were the ones who were compensated?
No.
The white folks were.
Exactly. And then you have Rhode Island, you have San Diego, all over the country. Okay. Local jurisdictions are popping up to deal with this issue of reparations. And we're hoping that all of this spurs the bill on the federal level as well.
Okay.
I mentioned one more thing. 20 years prior to all of this activity, there were city councils all over the country, from DC to Chicago to Philadelphia to San Diego to, just all over, passing resolutions in support of HR 40. This was all part of the thrust from National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, which I was a founding member, were instituted. So this is, like I would say, the second wave.
Okay, so listen, if go ahead.
I don't know, if you talked about John Conyers having introduced HR 40 in 1989.
Yeah.
So yeah, this has been a movement who's
30 years ago. But yeah, city councils after that were passing resolutions in support of that federal bill. Yeah.
Okay, so white folks. Now, there's a lot of white folks are saying, well, why should we have to pay reparations? That was our ancestors. It wasn't us. What do you say to that?
You live in this country. Because you live in this country, you benefited from enslavement. You didn't have to have any slaves. The fact that you live in this country, this is part of your burden and part of your inheritance. The fact that enslaved people were here set the foundation for the Southern economy, and really not the Southern economy, but the nation's economy, because the cotton went to New England where it was manufactured, and that those textile mills were the seminal part of their economy. So no, you didn't have any enslaved people, but you benefited from the institution of enslavement, and you benefited subsequently from the institutions that reinforce white supremacy. Well, Black people
agree 1,000%, because I get that question all of the time. And although the present generation of whites in this country may be innocent of the crimes of their predecessors, as a people, they stand in a privileged position as a result of those actions. And they benefit, as Malveaux said, from a society, from a state, from an economic structure, all that's buttressed by white supremacy. And they cannot escape that.
Yeah, and I don't see them really trying to dismantle it. They just, they're still passing laws that they're still Black code laws that they're passing. They're just, mumbled up and maybe, has some fancy language, but when you really look at them, it's still marginalizing us. All right. Yep, I know you have to go. Thank you. Wait, let me just tell everybody else one more time about this book.
Oh, yeah,
you guys have got to get the book right there. Right there. Black
Congratulations. And I talk about reparations in here.
Okay. Black Power, Black Lawyer, My Audacious Quest for Justice. Nkechi Taifa, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It was my honor. I'm thrilled. And Dr. Malveaux, you take it away from here. Love you all.
All right. Bye-bye.
More, sister. Appreciate you.
Peace and blessings. Bye-bye.
Okay. You know what, Dr. Malveaux, I can talk to you all the time. I'm telling you, you are so monumental in HAPi, because you were at every spot, just, you know, getting us to the next spot. You know, almost like the transitional lady. You were so, you're like knowledgeable, like every single thing. And it really just, you know, yeah, there's so much footage on you. All right. I'm sorry. So you guys talked a little bit about like the major groups that's advocating for reparations today. So is there any, are you guys working collectively in terms of, you know, presenting like one idea, or is this how it goes? Everyone kind of does their own thing and then we just see what happens?
Well, we're working collectively, but we're also working with individual groups. In COBRA is one of our major partners. Cam Howard is the head of that. And he's on the commission also. So we have a kind of an interlocking thing. Ron Daniels is really the glue of the whole thing, putting everything together, working with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and some others. So I think that it's kind of I don't know what the word I want to use is, but it's moving along very nicely. I think that we're all pleased. It's work, but it's good work. It's like John Lewis in Good Trouble. It's good work, and you know, we think that we've moved the needle some.
Mm-hmm. You know, in terms of like just administrations that have been in office, has there been any administration that's been like a little bit more open to it, like during, you know, even like the Obama years? Like, you know, this is not like it's not nothing new. No.
I mean, I think Clinton at some point may have said something about he apologized for enslavement. You know, I mean, Obama. Oh, I'll tell you a funny story. I could tell it now. He's out of office. So the 2004 convention, Democratic convention, I was working for Willie Gary, who had a television network, and I was able to snag an Obama interview, which I was really pleased about. And we had a great time. His little people were like, "You can only have 15 minutes," but you know, Black people who know Black people, we were talking for maybe 40 minutes. And then I said, "Well, what do you think about reparations?" And he said, "Turn off the camera." Yeah. But, you know, given that fact that he wasn't running for president, then he was a senator from Illinois. But given the fact that he intended to have white support, he had to in order to be president, he was not going to co-sign anything like that. I had hoped that in his second term, he might do something. But that wasn't on his list of priorities.
Yeah.
We got healthcare. We got healthcare.
It's not too late. He can jump in right now. You know, he still has a no.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that, you know, I think that he's deliberately, you know, kind of stayed non-controversial till he went off on Trump the other night.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So in terms of like the you know, the two candidates that's running now, what is their temperament or what is their feeling about reparations? And do you really think it's something there?
Well, I think there's something there. I think that Biden more than likely would be open to at least a conversation. He has his plan for Black America. He always talks about making Black America whole. So I think he would be, I'm not sure what else he would be willing to do, but I'm sure that he would be open to the conversation and to looking at the legislation. Don't even ask me about that other man. I mean,
no one needs to talk about the other man. Yeah. So now, okay. When has there ever been a study of just the estimated financial value of reparations owed to African Americans? Like, has anyone doing any studies about the numbers?
There are several studies out. Well, Richard F. America, an economist who I don't even know if he's still with us, but he wrote a book about reparations back in the 70s when I was an undergrad, and he put a number on it then, which I would have to go back and figure out. But there have been some studies. The issue, of course, is getting the structure and, you know, figure it out. I'm not going to give an estimate at this time because I can't back it up. But
a true number, lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You know, I don't have any more questions for you, but I want you to talk about the book that you mentioned in HAPi. It's your love letter to people. My
love letter to Black people. The book is called Surviving and Thriving, 350 365 facts in Black economic history. And I call it a love note to my people because just like Nkechi was talking about what she didn't know until a certain time, there's a lot of our history that we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I talk about Maggie Lena Walker all the time. She's a Black woman first Black woman to charter a bank in Richmond, Virginia in 1903. And that bank was the longest tenured Black bank we had. It went out of business in 2005. So it was around for more than 100 years. A lot of people didn't know about Maggie Lena, but there's a big old statue of her in downtown Richmond. It's only been there for about 3 or 4 years, but there's a big old statue of her in downtown Richmond. So, I mean, I just love it. I mean, there's just so much of our history that we don't know because either we haven't studied, because they don't want us to know. When you ponder our history, you basically are pondering our power. And it says you just through it all, that by Bible stuff. So, okay, I'm stuttering again. That means I'm tired. Through it all, the Bible song, through it all.
Yeah.
Through it all, we're still here. We're still here. And, you know, there are those who wish we weren't. And there are those who tried to exterminate us time and time again, but we're still here. And that is inspiration for our young people. That's why I called it a love note. As I wanted people to just ponder on some of the good stuff about us. We always hear the bad stuff. You know, we always hear the bad stuff. We have a lot of good stuff too.
Absolutely. And, you know, when you talked about just, you know, that we've always been people that have been involved in our economics, just like when you talk about the purchasing, you know, people purchase themselves. You know, talk a little bit about that. You know, I don't want to give away the movie. Like, people, y'all need to go see HAPi. If you have not seen HAPi, you need to come. Even if you just close your eyes and just listen to Dr. Malveaux throughout the whole thing, you're not, because as soon as, you know, we start talking, you're going to be like this, you know, looking at this film. But yeah, just talk a little bit about that.
You know, well, there were three kinds of enslaved people. There were those who stayed, there were those who ran, and there were those who purchased themselves. And when I say purchase yourself, I talk about this all the time. I get a feeling in the pit of my stomach, like, how do you purchase yourself? I mean, it's a Faustian kind of bargain. The master thinks you're a person enough to have a deal with you, but also you're a slave enough not to be treated equally. I mean, it's just really, there's so many contradictions therein. But in Cincinnati at a point in time, about 25% of the Black people who were there, about 1850, were self-emancipated. They had basically paid, you know, their owners for their freedom. Mary Keckley, the woman who worked for Abraham Lincoln and Mary Todd Lincoln, she was self-emancipated. She paid her owner for herself and her son. And the bond between she and Mary Todd Lincoln was that her son was killed in the Civil War, as was the Lincoln son. And so that's how the two women bonded. But she was their tailor, and she, you know, basically bought herself. The people who did it, and then you have, you know, I love the runaway slaves. Those are mine. I said, you know, I would have been a runaway slave.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah.
But there was this brother, and now his name escapes me, but he was in Ohio. Well, no, he started out in Virginia, and he was sold down south, and he ran away like maybe 3 times, and got beaten every time. Finally, he told a white woman, he said, "Would you please buy me so I could buy myself back from you?" You know, so he had all kinds of skills. He did stuff on the side, and he was able to buy himself back from her. And she was not, but you know, the machinations of that. And then he was, gee, I wish I could remember that man's name. I'll send it to you so you could put it in here somewhere.
Okay. But, yeah, absolutely.
But he was, he went to Ohio, and then he used to just go on back on people's plantations and tell enslaved people, come on. He was like a Midwestern version of Harriet Tubman. This brother was so bad that they had a reward on his head, and was like $50 if you brought him in dead, but $500 if you brought him in alive, because they wanted to probably torture him or something like that. Yeah, because he just said, "Come on, y'all, come on," and he was just pulling people off plantations.
Damn. Hey, we bad. You know, I know that for every bad story that we keep hearing and the sad and tragic stories, but the fact, like you said, we're still here, you know, and we always throughout time have been trying to figure this out, you know, just
Yes.
never laid down. So you mentioned earlier about your new book. So tell us about the new book.
Well, it's not done yet. It's not done yet, and I'm behind on it, so I'll just leave it alone for the moment.
You know, listen, anybody that can sit down and write a book, and you've written a couple, that is, let me tell you, more power to you. More power to you. That's what's up.
Well,
That's
thank you.
Okay, I'm looking through here to see if people have questions, but you guys have actually answered almost all the questions. The National Black Caucus. Do you have any confidence in them? Someone, a child of Ogun, is asking about that.
The Congressional Black Caucus, did they mean?
I think so. Yeah.
If you look at those folks ideologically, they range a spectrum. You have some of them who are very conservative, some like Sister Maxine Waters, Sister Marsha Fudge, you know, time enough for white supremacy, time enough for it. So you have a range. And some of them basically don't represent Black districts. They represent districts that are majority white, but they still basically join the caucus, do work. I think that what people need to understand is the legislative process. In other words, a lot of people expect Black members of Congress to, I don't know what their expectation is, but from that perspective, often people say they don't meet their expectations. But the fact is that we don't know what they do to keep stuff bad from going down. I mean, legislation is the end point. There's all kind of negotiations along the way. And so, you know, I think often people don't understand. And no, you're not going to find a bunch of nationalists in the Congressional Black Caucus, but you will find that I think most of them have now endorsed HR 40, which was not the case 10 years ago. So it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. Does every state have a council that's working on reparations?
No, not to my knowledge. But people are working. I mean, NCOBRA has chapters all over the country.
Okay.
So, you know, but people are working on it, and we're working on it.
Yeah. Yes, you are. And I can't wait to look at the 10 points. We will be definitely posting that. That is important. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, thank you. Just thank you for making this happen. You know, you guys don't know, but she was like doing something right before she came to us. You know, I was asking Nkechi about this in terms of staying busy, and she said since COVID, like she was busy prior, but she was like now it's almost she's on a 24-hour clock because people from overseas, you know, will call her. So then you're doing something at 1 o'clock in the morning, but then you're here in the States. It's just a lot of
and Zoom. I mean, I love the technology, but sometimes it gets on my nerves.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I can sit in this chair all day.
Yeah, definitely. So,
I love your earrings, by the way.
Well, thank you. You know, this is courtesy of 125th Street. I love me some 125th Street. they just have everything on 125th.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like every time I go. Yeah, it's like I'll probably pick up earrings. I'm addicted.
I haven't walked 125th in a long time. I have not been on 125th in a long time. I used to love to go there. I'm not going anywhere until somebody figures out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's like now when you go to I've lived in New York for about 20 years now, but it has changed since the 20 years I've been here. So 125th is like, okay, it doesn't look quite, you know, it's changing a little bit. Yeah.
Bill Clinton put his office in there and it gentrified. That's what happened.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for making this happen. Yeah. And so, all right, I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Yes. So if you have not picked up her book, a love letter to Black people, pick it up, please. And I think, you know, it's on your website.
Yeah, it's on my website.
Yeah. And your website is
JulianneMalveaux.com. Just my name.com. Real easy. Okay. Good night.
Good night. All right. Okay, guys, listen, please like this video. Okay, like the video, share it to somebody. We are trying to get to 10K. Okay, I think we're at like 9.4, but everybody on here know like 10 people. All you have to do is just say, look, just send them this video. This was very informative. Then just go ahead, tell them to like it, to share, but to subscribe to our channel so we can keep bringing dope people like Dr. Malveaux, Nkechi Taifa, Riza Islam, Lord Jamar, all these people. Please subscribe to our channel. Also, we have a screening of the film coming November 21st, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like I said, even if you have the DVD or you have the video online, it's all about the screenings. We have a surprise guest that he's this person is a HAPi cast member that has not been at any of the screenings yet. So this is why you guys just gotta tune in. It's gonna be dope. I'm telling you, dope.com. Go to hapifilm.com, get your tickets. We got the panel discussion afterwards. But if you just can't wait, and you know, like maybe you already got a ticket, and you're like, you know what, I just can't wait. I gotta see this film right now. You can literally just go onto Vimeo and you can download the film right now. You can see everything. Please, family, okay? Please go to our website and subscribe to the newsletter, like our videos, share the videos. It's been so nice. And just a couple of shout outs to our people up in the chat. I tell you, Blackmore Films, again, you got to go see. Just follow him on Instagram. Just start with Instagram, go to YouTube, put in Blackmore Films, get his film, get HAPi, get the Wilmington film, and just, you know, let's just get this learning going in. Also, we want to also just thank all the supporters that have been supporting us in a real way. Thank you very much. And before I sign out, just remember, guys, November 21st, like the video. He's like, we only got a couple of likes up here. We know you guys was up in here because we see you in the chat. So like the video, share it, and all that good stuff. Peace, family.